Now, Harvey, on a slightly going from one extreme to the other, we had a terrible tragedy in our community in the last few weeks, and it's been front page story in Newsday. A young 16-year-old boy was stabbed to death in Oceanside and lost his life. And, you know, when a terrible tragedy hits our community, I think we all feel it. When such a young person loses his life in such a tragic way, it's just such a devastating thing for everyone in the Long Beach, Oceanside, Island Park communities, and all of Long Island.
Now I know why you brought me here, being a school administrator and working 20 years in the schools, being a former police officer, and being aware of the tragedies and the violence that occurs, especially in gangs. And I think the one thing that we have to bring to view, that the world has changed. And I really think the things that I was speaking about more than 20 or 30 years ago was that families have to be involved with their children and know who they're with and what they do, and that, you know, your children are not your best friend. As a parent, you have an obligation and a responsibility to be aware of who your children are with and what they're doing in their life. I know with the social media and everything, we really have a challenging environment, and what has taken place here, this man didn't go over there. They organized a fight, and they brought other fighters with them, other children with them. And the horror of the story was the fact that instead of helping somebody who was being stabbed, they were taking pictures with their phones. And I think this really says something about what's happening in our environment, what's happening to our people, the insensitivity. You see somebody being assaulted, instead of jumping in and helping, you're taking pictures. Well,
Horrible.
It's a message to be told. And I'll tell you something else. The person that stabbed us, he was a druggie. Obviously has a history of drugs and previous situations. And I understand, I want people and their families to know that if your kid was one of the other 7 or 8 kids that were there with the one who stabbed them, they're guilty as well.
Absolutely.
And they should be convicted of a criminal activity for being there with them, because this is how these tragedies happen. And if you're gonna be in a criminal situation and you're part of the group that's doing it, you're gonna have to suffer the consequences. Not only the person that stabbed him, but the people that were there rallying support for the one that did stab him. And it's just a tragedy for the youngster, 16 years old. That takes your heart away and your breath away. But you know, maybe I just hope that we can make people aware that there's an obligation and responsibility, because the most important aspect is who the hell is controlling your house. I mean, who's controlling these young kids today? With all the violence that we have, I mean, this is the thing that offends me the most. The violence that you can see on television, on your phone, and in the movies. I mean, all we have is anger and violence being perpetrated as some kind of a trait that is acceptable. Well, it isn't. And they got to have people that do the convictions, our district attorneys, to do their job and prosecute these people and make them aware of the consequences of their behavior.
Yeah, and one thing, Harvey, it just hit me that, you know, reading about this in Newsday, the family of the young man, the Morris family of the young man that stabbed, said that the funeral is going to be next Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Tower Funeral Home on Long Beach Road in Oceanside. And, you know, I'm going to go. I don't even know the family, but they said that all are invited, and I just want to go just to support the family. Just because I feel that it was so tragic, but this seems like such a nice family, and an angel was taken from them. I just want to go just to support this family.
No, it goes back to the fact that why was this guy carrying a knife? And why are people taking guns to school? I mean, look what's happening in our society today. And somebody's got to take a stand, and people have to have, as I say, you have an obligation and a responsibility to know more about what the activities and the behaviors and the people, your young people are with, because the consequences in a situation like this are devastating, not only to the victim, but to everybody in that school who's going to suffer for the rest of their life. Those people that saw this tragedy take place, that doesn't go out of your mind ever. So they're all people that are being impacted by this terrible horror that took place.
Absolutely, and I feel Hopefully that the only good thing that will come from this horrible tragedy, because this story was reported all over the country, and the only good thing I feel is that, God forbid, there's another situation like this anywhere else in the country, that if there's a crowd of people around, instead of sitting there and videotaping it on their cell phones, they'll run and they'll help the person being attacked. I just hope that that will resonate with a lot of people, and something like this will be averted in the future, that, you know, people, so many people will not just be standing on their cell phones videotaping, that they'll run in to help.
I can only think of something on the opposite side of this. When we had a tragedy in Northport High School many years ago with Louis Akampora, 14-year-old youngster playing lacrosse on the field in Northport, and he got hit in the chest, and he went into ventricular fibrillation and CPR. They couldn't revive him, and he died on the field. And this family went out. I called them, and I passed legislation to put defibrillators in every school in the state of New York. And of course, it went to many other resources as well. But I can't tell you how many people's lives were saved from a tragedy. I don't know who's going to be saved from this tragedy, except that I hope the message goes out from our program, making you aware as a parent or a family member. What the hell are your kids doing, and who are they with? And if they have any kind of a weapon, there's no understanding for this. But anger and violence seems to proceed. And this is the country, this is the environment that our families are in today. And it's almost like acceptable behavior. Look at the gangs that came here and that have murdered so many people out on Long Island. Well, the prosecutors, the FBI, and the people in law enforcement are doing a heck of a job to clean this up. But it's everybody's responsibility in your house, in your home, to be able to be on top of what is happening with your family.
Well said. And we thank Harvey Weisenberg for words of wisdom, and we always love the wisdom and the words and the advice, and from the great, the icon, the one and only Harvey Weisenberg, with the Weisenberg perspective.